Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fresh Off the Set. My name is David Osmond.
And I'm Carrie Hawker-Diaz. Okay, David, this week's podcast, I am so jealous you got to sit down with the man, the myth, the legend, Dan Clark.
He's such a good dude. And you know him well. You've been friends with he and his family. And he's just the ultimate guy. To know him is to love him, and he walks in a room and just lights it up. He's the coolest guy and the ultimate storyteller. He is one of the main contributors to Chicken Soup for the Soul, and it was Chicken Soup for the Soul Day recently, and so I thought, who better else to sit down but with Dan Clark and ask him about his life and how he came to be an ultimate, author and best-selling author, a storyteller and a keynote speaker and everything, a songwriter. And so I had a chance to dive in with an old friend and really talk about how everybody has a story to tell. And he gives a lot of tips and tricks on how to get and craft that story out of you, to get it out onto paper or to stand in front of someone, and how to command a room with a story. Yeah. How to take the mundane, even though you may think it's just the most boring story to tell, and then twist it, turn it, find those little moments within it so that it's just engaging and exciting, and then has maybe a moral or comedy. And it was just really cool to talk about how you craft your words and to tell a story. It's fantastic.
You know, you're so right when you say he's an amazing storyteller. I've seen him speak multiple times, and I'm always just on the edge of my seat. Like, he's so inspirational. Yeah. You're just like, man, how can I be like Dan Clark? He's a cool guy.
And a man after my own heart. He not only has all these great stories with morals and good stuff to really talk about, the true stories of life, but he also has a joke book. And so that's really where I identified and connected with him. He has the best dad jokes, basically, is what it is. But life is funny, and you find those moments. And even in the serious stuff, in the pain and the trials and the hardships, there still is something that you can take from that and put a comedic twist on it, which you wouldn't expect if it can grasp an audience, and then ultimately break down the barrier of their notions and conceptions of what they think you might be saying, and all of a sudden they learn something without even knowing it. It's pretty cool. His perspective on that was golden.
Oh, well, I can't wait to listen, and I know everyone listening here as well is excited. Should we just let him hear it?
All right, Dan, we love you, man. Take it away. What's up, everybody? This is David Osmond here in the podcast studio. Thanks for listening to Fresh Off the Set. Today, I have a very special guest who I consider, in my family, an adopted Osmond. I hope he considers me an adopted Clark, because I feel like for the years that we've known each other, that we've just bonded and connected, and I think it is through that story. The shortest distance between two people is a great story, and I don't know any better storyteller than the infamous man, the legend, the myth, Dan Clark is in the studio today. He's a major contributor to the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, but there's so much more to his career as a patriot, as a husband, as a father, as a grandfather, as a songwriter, as a keynote speaker, motivational, also a football player, going back playing for the University of Utah. He's got just so many layers to his life and stories to go along with it that are life lessons that we can all learn from. And we don't have enough time at all to even dive into the half of the layers of onion that you have here. But Dan, welcome to Fresh Off the Set. Thank you for being with me.
Thanks, David. I appreciate you, and you know how much I love and honor you as an individual and your entire family. I've been friends with Donnie for many, many years, and Marie, and I honor your dad and your uncles, and know your brothers, Doug and Nate, pretty well as well. Not as well as you, but I'm honored to be on your show and just hang out with you anytime. You know, when I was tested positive for COVID, I coughed so violently when I was in the hospital. I coughed so violently, I ruptured the blood vessels in my vocal cords.
Yeah.
And I was really struggling, and I ran into you at an outdoor concert of our dear friend Ron Saltmarsh.
That was
his band together, and
I remember this moment.
And I asked your advice. I was scrambling. I was really hurting and nervous because it's how I make my living. And you told me to call good old Uncle Donnie, and I talked to him, and he gave me the name of his specialist. And I've had 3 surgeries subsequent to that. My voice is getting stronger. Wish I could sing like an Oz.
You're sounding good, man. Hey, it's just controlled yelling. That's all singing is. So,
yeah. But I bring that up just so people know how deep our relationship goes and how much I've cared about you and how much you have obviously cared about me and my family all these years. Thank you. We love you. We honor you.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you, Dan. I call those things the level 3 and level 4 relationships. Yeah. Like, who in your phone, if it's 2 a.m, you're stranded, there's no Uber, there's no Lyft, who do you wake up in the middle of the night that will experience that discomfort on your behalf? Who will go the extra mile? What relationship do you have that way? You are that level 4 for me, and I
Thanks.
that's why I consider you family. And I've learned so much from you, and I feel like every time we interact, even on a social fun level, I feel just you light up the room, man, just with laughter and comedic timing. And there's something brilliant about being able to take a life story or just a compelling experience and turning that into something that is just through your words, the crafting of a storytelling that is remarkable. And you've proven that with your 37 books that you have authored and then contributed to so many other great authors in telling their story. But in particular, the brand that everybody knows, the Chicken Soup for the Soul. Jack Canfield and
Mark Victor Hansen.
Mark
They were the geniuses behind the title. My third book, called 1 Minute Messages, was kind of an influence, huge influence in that whole process. And I became the primary contributing author, contributing 100 of my stories that were sprinkled throughout the 400 million books that have been sold so far.
Unbelievable.
But you know what? Let's just cut right to the chase for your listeners, because everybody has a story.
Yeah.
And if we just take the time to figure out what the life lessons are and add some humor so people really enjoy listening to your story, make it evocative by adding a quote, and then make it emotional so people remember, it's amazing how that deepens our communication, 1-on-1, 1-on-12 in a boardroom, 1-on-20,000 in an arena.
Yeah.
Because facts tell, but stories sell. Think about it. So let's just go back to my experience in the hospital. So I'm tested positive for COVID. I'm staying in a different side of our home. My daughter is in town from California for the holidays. It's December 17th. My wife has a prompting to come and check on me. I can't breathe. I don't have, enough energy to even text her. I'm in trouble. They throw me in the car, drive me to the hospital. And because of COVID protocol, they had to drop me off at the curb and watch me walk across the parking lot and check myself into the emergency room in the hospital.
Jeez.
And my wife and my daughter said they sat in the car for 15 minutes and sobbed and cried, wondering if they would ever see me alive again. Well, I know why my wife stopped crying, because she remembered I had millions of dollars of life insurance.
Jeez.
And I can see her crying at my funeral saying, I'd give $10,000 of it just to have him back.
I knew it. I was with you, but I'm like, he's not going to go there. He's not going to just rip my heart out and then just stomp on it.
So that's that. When we would get together,
I love it, Dan.
We used to call it Chicken Soup You at Jack Canfield's house in Santa Barbara. And somebody would tell a story and we'd say, what's the chicken soup? So we need to ask that in every single situation.
What does that mean to you?
What's the message? What's the meaning?
The heart.
What's the heart? What's the emotion? So, for example, I played football forever at the University of Utah. Projected #1 draft pick by the Raiders.
That's 13 years of your life.
Exactly,
right? Yeah.
Especially those 9 as a freshman. Yeah, let's go there. Yeah, like I said, for those of you who actually think David Osmond is all that with no flaws, 7th grade was his senior year. Let's just start airing some family laundry here.
Yes.
And the 3 years I was a junior at East High School almost killed the whole faculty.
Oh, jeez.
Let's not go there.
Anyway,
so listen,
I love humor,
so
laughter. I mean, dude, yeah.
So let me give you examples.
Might as well laugh about things now, right?
So I played football, and I'm paralyzed for 14 months. I went to 16 doctors, 15 of whom told me I would not recover. I'd never get any better.
Jeez.
So in a speech, you would pause and say, have any of you ever heard that? What happens if you believe it? You never get any better. And my life spiraled downward until I hit what I thought was rock bottom. Now that I've recovered, I've fought my way back to a 95% recovery. The 3 most frequently asked questions are, what do you mean you thought you hit rock bottom? And then I would say to the audience, if you remember nothing else I say, or even nothing else I say on this podcast, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how tough life gets, no one ever hits rock bottom. We hit rock foundation. We hit rock belief. We hit the baseline core values and governing principles on which we were raised. Profound.
Yeah.
Number 2, frequently asked question, why did I go to so many different doctors? I kept going from doctor to doctor until I found one who believed I would get better. And then you got to teach, who reminded me that knowledge is power, but it has no heart. We don't learn to know, we learn to do. Now add some humor. all the information in the world isn't going to make a person successful. It's like the guy who has 3 PhDs, one in philosophy, one in psychology, one in sociology. He doesn't have a job, but at least he can explain why.
It's good.
You see how you make your stories come alive?
How do you document that in your brain where you file it away and you have just all these arrows and quivers you can pull out at the drop of a hat? That is something you learn.
Yeah.
You have a natural gift. There's no question. The ability to communicate in such a great way. When you're at the University of Utah, you're playing football in what position?
Defensive end, stand-up linebacker.
And then you're studying academically
psychology.
Psychology.
Yes, sports psychology. Yeah.
So to go from those early days, you're a teenager. Did you always speak like this? Was this just a natural gift? You were the class clown. You're the funny guy.
Yeah, I could always make people laugh, but I could no more stand up in front of a room and teach anything or give a speech than flatter the man. I couldn't do that. So it's a learned skill that everyone can learn, but it's all based on what you believe. And if you have conviction, if you really know what you believe and you believe that your story is not your own, because if it can save a marriage, if it can keep someone from taking their life in suicide, if it can kickstart an entrepreneurial idea and help someone's dream come true, it's your story, but it's no longer your right to keep that story to yourself if you know that you can share it and heal the world.
That's awesome.
And
that's
once
a great way to put it.
you know what you believe, and someone asks you a question about nuclear physics, I'm gonna Clark, what about resilience, Clark? How do you get back up and go again?
Yeah.
And I can look people in the eye and talk as long as they'll let me about how to get back up and go again. You can't quit. It's a league rule because I'm an eyewitness. I've experienced that. And every single one of your listeners today has at least one signature story that changed their stars just like we began. Yeah. The level 4 of relationships. Well, what about the 6 degrees of separation? As I've analyzed people in my life who have changed my stars, beginning with a coach in high school who gave me a second chance, and Zig Ziglar, who sponsored me in the National Speakers Association. He's the guy that introduced me to Nancy Reagan, who invited me into the Reagan White House to take the Just Say No program to all 50 states.
Wow.
That launched my career. And I analyzed my life as an elderly gentleman now, and I think really I only had 6 people in my life that literally changed me forever. And we all have those. So the question that we need to ask, I just got through speaking at the Commanders Conference at Langley Air Force Base for Air Combat Command. I speak for the Air Force and the military all over the world, so I serve my country. And what dawned on me flying into Virginia was that we always say, find a hero. Who's your hero? Who's your hero? And the military are always put up on a pedestal. We just had Veterans Day, even though this is an evergreen podcast. And the question I had to the Air Force senior leaders was, when are you going to be your own hero? When do you realize the cavalry's not coming? Nobody's going to come to save you. When can you stand up and be your own hero? When can you really believe it's not enough to say, I will do my best? We must succeed in doing that which is necessary. And in order for us to teach that, be your own hero, so someone else will use you, will rely on you, will lean on you to help them get through the tough times. That just means everything matters and that we're all here together. And when the water in the lake goes up, all the boats rise together. It's the essence of team building. We don't, when I work with most of the teams in the National Football League, I remind them that yes, we win and lose as a team, but we win and lose because of individuals. What are you willing to do on a daily basis to make yourself more valuable? And then what are you willing to do every day to make everybody else around you better? So they leave saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. That's a David Osmond. Every time we're around, I leave you saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again.
Yeah. That's
Every time I'm around, Donnie or anybody else in your family except Aunt Marie, I always leave saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again.
And we see that in just tongue in cheek because of how close you are and family you are. You seriously have been so intertwined. I don't even remember the first time we met. I don't remember where it was. I just feel like we've always known each other. Exactly. It's one of those things, Public speaking, is always known as it's horribly frightening. It's the worst thing for most people to stand up at a mic. So do you remember the very first time you had to give a speech, a talk? What was that moment like? And
that's a great question.
And what's your advice to someone to stand up and hold that mic and tell that story that's in them? So
you're absolutely right. They say the number one fear of people, more more fearful than the fear of dying or falling off a tall building or the fear of snakes or spiders. People claim that the number one fear of people is the fear of speaking in public. I disagree. The number one fear of people is not speaking well in public. When you're prepared, you shall not fear.
Yeah.
Again, back to what I said. When you know what you believe and you know what you're talking about, give me the microphone. But here's where it all began, and I think this is cool as we start to close down our time. So I'm 13 years old. And an English teacher in junior high, she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And she said, Danny, I think you should write a story. I think you should enter this speech essay competition. I said, that's not me. You know, I can make people laugh, but that's not me. And she goes, Danny, I think you should do it. So I took the time. I took her challenge seriously. And when I was 13 years of age, I wrote my two most famous, iconic stories, one of which was turned into a film at Paramount Studios starring Jack Lemmon. It's won 22 film festivals so far.
Great movie.
It's called Puppies for Sale. And I wrote that story and the circus story about my dad and I standing in line to purchase some tickets to go to the circus, another very famous, iconic story. Those two stories were responsible for selling millions of copies of Chicken Soup for the Soul. It only takes one or two hits on an album to sell the album. You can have, John Lennon has 4 hits and then Yoko Ono screaming on another 6 tracks and you still buy the John Lennon album and you handle the 6 screams.
That's right.
And we know that's true.
It's true.
So you only need
Exactly
one
right.
great story or 2 great stories in any book to make people want to buy it. And I'm just so proud to claim that. And I've got so many iconic stories throughout the Chicken Soup series. That's why I'm the primary contributing author. But you think about the story Puppies for Sale and how iconic it is in the message. And if I could just share that, it'll be quick. And you can tell I've told it a million times because I can just whip it out. A store owner was tacking a nail in a sign above his store door which read Puppies for Sale. Signs like that have a way of attracting small children. And sure enough, a little boy appears at the store owner's side. He says, how much are you going to sell the puppies for? The store owner assured the little boy that they were very, very good dogs, and he didn't expect to let any of them go for anything less than $35 to $50. To that, the little boy reaches in his pocket. He pulls out some change. He counts it for a minute. He looks up at the store owner. He says, well, sir, I have $2.37. Can I look at the little puppies? The store owner smiles. He says, sure, son, and he whistles. Out of the kennel comes Lady, the mama dog, running down the aisle of the store, followed by 5 little teeny balls of fur, one puppy lagging considerably behind the others.
Yeah.
Immediately, the little boy singles out the lagging, limping puppy. He says, what's wrong with that little dog? The store owner says, we took that dog to the veterinarian. The doctor examined it, discovered it didn't have a hip socket. It would always limp. It would always be slow. Little guy says, that's the little puppy I want to buy. The store owner says, nah, you don't want to buy that little dog. If you really want him, I'll just give him to you. Oh. Now the little guy gets ticked off. He gets right in the face of the store owner, points his finger, and he says, I don't want you to just give him to me. That little puppy right there is worth every bit as much as all the other little dogs, and I'll pay full price. In fact, I'll give you $2.37 now and 50 cents a month until I have him paid for. The store owner says, no, you don't want to buy that little dog. He's never going to be able to run and jump and play with you like the other little puppies. In response to that, the little boy reaches down. He pulls up his pant leg to reveal a badly twisted left leg supported by a big steel splint going down each side of his leg. The little physically challenged kid looks up at the store owner and he says, well, sir, I don't really run so well myself, and the little puppy will need someone who understands.
Wow.
So as a songwriter, we know that it's the hook that sells the song. The dance, Garth Brooks. I could have missed the pain, but then I had to miss the dance.
Yeah.
Tim Nichols wrote Live Like You're
Live
Dying.
Like Tim McGraw.
Chuck Cannon wrote How Do You Like Me Now for Toby Keith. It's that hook. And so when we can formulate our stories and then put our songwriter hat on and edit so every word pays its own way and make sure there's a hook that people remember, that's what brings out the emotion. And so the process of storytelling is, I talk about it in my book. If anybody is serious about that or they want me to help you with your storytelling, my book's called Story Selling, and I'm not on this podcast to sell anything. But I believe that if you're serious about climbing the corporate ladder and leadership, if you're serious about becoming the very best version of yourself, serious about learning how to close more sales, serious about being that oral historian of your family history, you've got to become a great storyteller, and there's a process, and it's so fun to learn that art and science, and I'm here to help you.
You are the best in the biz when it comes to the art of the storytelling process and seeing things. There's great there's truths in these stories that we can relate to. There's something about when you get that goosebump, that when you hit that heartstring. What is that moment? How do you know that you've hit it? You know that it's genuine, that it's authentic, that it just connects with an audience. When you're sitting in your den, and you're writing these stories out. When do you feel the feels?
Such a great story again, David. So I spoke at the Maui Writers Conference over in Hawaii one year, and I was on the program with Matt Damien's mother and Steven Spielberg. And it was a wonderful experience for me, and I was there as a writer. And then we opened it up to Q&A, and this guy asked Steven Spielberg, how do you decide what movies you're going to make? And Steven Spielberg became a little kid. He says, I only make movies that I want to watch, that I want to go see, that I would pay money to see again. And then he kind of went off E.T. and how fun was that in the middle of the filming, he decided he wanted him to his head to go up. So now he gets with the the engineers who work not animation, but to make his head go up. Anyway, and so he said it's just a process of self-interest. So when I was first getting invited to speak, I go to my dad, my hero, who's a great speaker, and I said, Dad, what kind of a speaker should I be? He said, you should be the kind of speaker that you like to listen to, and that's why I became a storyteller. Huh. So when I write a story, the first thing I do, when I write a song, I often visualize the artist that I want to sing it.
Yeah.
And that it kind of tweaks your emotion. It kind of tweaks your subject matter. Mm-hmm. So I write a song. I started thinking, okay, who's the consummate redneck that could make this song a hit? And so I start to write towards that person's kind of strengths or weaknesses or whatever to make the song come alive. And the same thing with a story. So the challenge is you begin, the way you write a story, if I could just share my formula, it's been pretty successful, is you decide what message you want to share. You begin with the end in mind. What is the point of the story?
Yeah.
So let me just give you an example. I want a story that helps me teach unconditional support. I'm always there. I got your back. So I wrote, a mother encourages her daughter to come home as soon as school is over. The time comes, the time goes. 30 minutes later, daughter walks in through the front door of her home and her mother scolds her. Where have you been? I've been worried sick. She says, oh, Mommy, I walked my friend Sally home. She dropped her doll on the sidewalk or broke all to pieces. It was awful. Her mother says, so you're late because you stayed to help your friend pick up the pieces of the doll and put it back together again? She said, oh, no, Mommy, I didn't know how to fix the doll. I just stayed to help her cry.
Yeah.
So that draws on the emotion. It teaches the lesson, unconditional support. I'm always there for you, but it's the story that you'll remember.
In the mind's eye of the listener, you're putting yourself into that same scenario.
So you never tell
place.
a story, you relive the story.
Yeah.
And if it's a well-told story, if it's a well-structured story, you actually invite the listener or the reader into the story, and they can see themselves as one of the characters. So when you write a story, you have to come up with your message, then you have to create a protagonist, a hero, that defends or represents or sells that message. Then you have to create an antagonist who creates the pain, who creates the, wait a minute, I disagree. So it gives the hero a reason to overcome the evil, to overcome the obstacle, to champion the cause.
It's the tried and true hero's journey.
You got it.
Exactly. Every movie we've seen.
And then you add dialogue, so it makes it fun and interactive. And then you conclude with the hook so people remember it. It's the 5-step process, and that's why I've had so many successes with my storytelling, and I can teach anybody to do that if anybody's interested.
As a kid, and you should. If you're into this seriously, well, where can we go find you? Like, where should we find Dan Clark?
My website's danclark.com, but you can actually log on, go on your favorite site, and I want you to Google Dan Clark 360.
Okay.
And all of a sudden on your computer screen, you're going to get a dashboard, and it's going to have an opportunity for you to click on a button that says contact. And once you push that button contact, up in the right-hand corner is another button that says send text. And what I want you to do is push that and send me your full name, and maybe just say, the name of this podcast, and then give me your best email, and I'll send you some information on how to get a hold of me. And I'll probably give you a free download or a free book, free something. You're a dad, you're a parent. Are we winding down, or do I have time to just to quote the Clark Credo?
Please.
And then maybe give everybody a free copy of that they can put on the refrigerator door, especially if you're a young parent.
I absolutely.
Okay, so
100%.
So my mentor in the National Speaker Association, the world of speaking, was Zig Ziglar.
The best.
Yeah,
just
he sponsored me in
unbelievable.
the National Speaker Association way back in 1982. So we get pregnant with our first child in 1985. And Zig, one day, he picks me up. We're going out to the golf course, and he says, how much do you really believe what we're teaching the world. And I said, what do you mean, Zig? And he says, do you really believe you can mold someone's attitude? Can you really influence your children in the way they believe, in their sense of resilience, and that they really can get back up and go again? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, I'll challenge you. I want you to write the Clark Credo, something that you can actually teach your children as they grow older that will give you a before and an after effect, an actual report card that this mind over matter, that this motivational speaking, that this positive thinking really does make a difference. So I wrote the Clark Credo. So now our son is born in 1985, our first child. And every night before he went to bed, he's laying in his crib, and I would grab a hold of those little teeny bars on the crib, and we'd get eye contact. And I'd say, I'm smart, talented, and I never say never. I'm wanted, important, lovable, capable, and I can succeed. I love music. I'm a great athlete, and I'm going to get good grades in school. The only person I need to be better than is the person I was yesterday. So I never say I can't. I always say I can, I will. If I fall down or get knocked down, I just get back up and go again. If I spill or make a mistake, I just clean it up, learn why, and say, no big deal. God loves me and I love God, so I always treat others as they want to be treated. So when they're away from me, they always say, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. Every single night through spaced repetition, I would quote that to my son with eye contact, and he was spellbound. He was spellbound by the way my lips moved and the sound of my voice, and eventually got to that age where he would fill in a word.
Yeah.
And pretty soon he could quote a sentence. And pretty soon he got to that age where I would say before he would go to bed, Danny, who are you? And he would repeat back to me, I'm smart, talented, and I never say never. I'm wanted, important. He would quote the entire Clark Credo. Then our next child comes, Nicola, who you know, and then McCall, and then Alexandria, and every single one of them went through that same process. You know, proud to report our children never got in trouble.
Yeah.
They were always able to deal with failure. We always believed in the one-line hooks, you know, failure is an event, not a person. If you're not failing a few times, it means you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And we would use these one-liners to remind them of what they really believe, that they can get back up and go again. You get knocked down 7 times, you get up 8, because they're going to have more failures in their life than they'll ever have successes. They're going to have their hearts broken from boyfriends and girlfriends the whole life. So why not prepare them mentally so that they have something to lean on? And the coolest thing is now I have 5 grandbabies. And little Cora, she's 4 years old, and she can quote word verbatim the Clark Credo.
Clark Credo.
I have Jack, who's 2, not quite 2, and he's just spellbound as I sit him on my lap and I quote the Clark Credo. Huh. Baby Luca, he's 1 month old. My 2 other beautiful daughters, granddaughters, Aubrey and Emma, they know the Clark Credo. And the coolest thing, David, is that as adults, my 4 children can quote verbatim the Clark Credo, and I can call them out on a moment's notice and say, hey, what's the Clark Credo? Or better still, we're at the dinner table the other day, and Cora leans over and knocks over her glass of water, and instead of freaking out, I said, Cora, what's up? She goes, just clean it up. Say no big deal. Just clean it up.
She just pulled that right there.
Excuse me. So the concept of songs. Trisha Yearwood sang the song Remembers When. I remember attending your wedding, beautiful wedding, and I'm such a fan of you as a power couple. We all have songs. We all have that wedding song. You know, I'm at a buddy's wedding, and he trusts his buddy who's the DJ, and his bride-to-be, they're coming down the aisle, and she wants to walk in with the song, and she goes, I just want, this song. And my buddy is asked by the DJ, what's your walk-in song as the groom? And he goes, I love AC/DC. I trust you. Just pick one. So his bride comes down the aisle, and everybody's wonderful. It's something like by Luther Vandross. It was awesome. And his buddy pushes Highway to Hell on a Highway to Hell by AC/DC, and we're all just laughing, and he's finally getting into it, and his fiance's looking at him like, you got to be kidding me. Anyway, music can change you because it combines lyrics and emotion of the melody. And if we can think like a songwriter and use the emotion of a story and the emotional roller coaster ride of making people think and laugh and cry and feel, then we remember that story and it has the greatest impact. And we do that when we write jokes too, if we have a message.
Music is what feelings sound like.
That's beautiful.
And when you take that element of the music and the emotion, but then you take the story and you compact it, and you have to pick every syllable of those words because you only have so many lyrics you can put into a song that is palatable. It is an art form. It is a craft, and I've learned from you today, and hopefully you guys listening have as well. If you need more inspiration, go to danclark.com. Check out what he's doing. Everybody does have a story inside of them, and it's finding the way to tell it the best way possible so it's memorable.
And what I remind people, especially stars like you and superstar athletes and people who are in the limelight, is that they expect you to be the same superstar off stage as you are on stage, off the field as you're on the field. And if you're a blubbering idiot and you can't communicate, that's just so sad because that hero image is completely devastated. So what I say is that everybody expects us to tell our stories at the same level of excellence that created them.
Oh, that's cool.
So that means you've got to focus in on the art and science of storytelling. And
it's a concerted effort.
Exactly. It's a planned process. And once you figure out that process, it's amazing how you can just practice telling a story so you can tell it on the drop of a hat as an answer to a question on a podcast or in an interview or in a one-on-one conversation at a sports bar.
And I would think not just to be able to communicate better with others and you'll be more successful in life and business, but also I think to communicate to ourselves, to understand what is going through our own minds, our hearts, to put it out there on paper and to organize it so once you see it, you become what you think about. And that credo, I think that is an amazing thing. I need to go create one for my own family. That's something I should be doing. You've inspired me today, and hopefully to our audience as well. And you continue to do so.
Thanks.
What's the last thing I'll leave you with? What's the next thing for Dan Clark? You're living your best life. You're fulfilling your dreams. What's your bucket list? What's coming up next?
Still speaking. If anybody has any reason to benefit from my message, I'd love to be the keynote speaker at your organization or association.
Best in the biz.
I've had a top 5 songs, top 10 songs. I want to have a number 1 tune, and so that's always a collaboration. We already know that most hit songs are co-written, so I might be tapping on your shoulder here, brother, down the road. I'm just trying to make a difference. I've got some huge dreams. I want to make a lot of money in the next 5 years so that I can endow a scholarship at the University of Utah in my dad's name.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool if we could raise enough money to build a building and not call it after me like most billionaires do? That's just a joke. I want to call the building Anonymous. I think that would be so cool. Where's your third period class? Anonymous.
I'm in Anonymous.
So that we serve for the right reasons.
That's hilarious. I love that, Dan. And I love who you are. Your family, you are talking the talk, but you're walking it as well. And you are the real McCoy. Your stories, you're living it out loud. And thank you for being who you are and just inspiring the world. You're the butterfly effect in person here.
And just let me conclude by something you just brought up, that everybody has a story, but we have to be careful of the story we tell ourselves, the story about ourselves. And so many of us live in the past, and we can't live in the past. It's like someone's trying to rob our old house and we don't live there anymore.
Yeah, that's great.
And if we live in the future, it's about worry and anxiety. Living in the past causes depression. Let's live in the present right now and create the story that we know we are living in our true authenticity. It's like ordering an Uber ride that requires that we enter in our current location. If we lie about where we are, the directions won't work. So the challenge is to write your story and live in it in the present moment. Thanks for having me.
That's the best message to end on. Thank you for being here. You just made my day. Thank you to everyone for listening to Fresh Off the Set. This was completely inspiring for me, and so thank you for listening. Come back anytime. I mean, this is your podcast room. Yeah. This is where you've done tons of broadcasts, and so this is your home away from home.
Power Players with Dan Clark. What a great podcast.
Yeah, man.
A little competition.
You got a lot more stories to tell. Keep up the great work, brother.
Thanks, Big Dave.
Congrats, you made it to the end. If you want to continue to freshen up your day, you can watch us on Fresh Living every weekday on CBS Channel 2 in Utah at 1 o'clock. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel, KUTV Fresh Living, and follow us on social media. We will see you next week.